You're watching Split Decision on Lit Sports Online. This is the UFC 247 recap episode, Jones versus Reyes. And just getting into this, I mean, I think the theme of the night was terrible judging, right? I mean, you had the James Krause that should have won. You had the whole thing with Jon Jones. I mean, let's talk about this.
Yeah, I think it was, as the announcers did not, the on-air commentary did not fail to mention ad nauseum, I think there were a series of bad decisions on the card. I thought that I thought that first off, I thought Jonathan Martinez should have beat Hughes, and we saw the same judge making repeated bad decisions, but that's not to say that was the only bad part. I also thought that James Krause should have won. He had a round where he spent 4 minutes in top control, threatening with submissions and going for the finish, and the other guy kind of got up and took over the striking for the last minute of the round, right? But you got to score the fight round by round. It's essentially every fight in this sport is scored by individual smaller fights. If you really think about it, if it goes to the judge's scorecard, you're judging this 5-minute fight, and then this 5-minute fight, and then this 5-minute fight, and then if it's championship or main event, 2 more. And they're individually scored, and you're supposed to score them, and then you hand the card off, so you can't do anything else. You can't change your score or anything. And so a lot of the decisions that night were, questionable at best and egregious at worst. That's not necessarily the case, I don't think, in the main event like a lot of people are making it out to be. I think that it's arguable that Jon Jones won the fight for sure. On first watch, I thought Dominic Reyes won the fight. On second watch of the entire fight, I was kind of undecided, so I went back and I rewatched rounds 2 and 3 like 4 or 5 times, and I still, you could convince me either way. So we'll get to that a little later on in the video, I think. But it's just a bunch of questionable decisions, and some of the fighters got screwed, I think, unfortunately. But we can move on to the individual fights.
Sure. Why don't we talk about Lewis versus Latifi? I mean, this is a fight where Latifi was having his debut in the heavyweight division and survived some huge shots, but what's your take on the fight?
So one of the things that I talked about in the preview video was I was wondering how well Latifi was going to translate to this division, being that he is a relatively small guy for the light heavyweight division. Not that he's small in mass or kind of weight or anything, but just shorter arms, not as big of a reach. But it kind of complements his style in a sense that he likes to get close to people. He likes to get a clinch, get a takedown, get top control. So I was wondering how he was going to translate to a division where his opponents could be bigger than the divisions he's used to, Not only that, but he's facing a true heavyweight in Derrick Lewis, who's just a monster of a man. Had a reach advantage on him and has a power advantage on him for sure. Derrick Lewis is a monstrous puncher, and in Latifi's last fight at light heavyweight, we saw him get knocked out. So there's a lot of questions coming into this fight on, first off, how does he handle the weight change? Does he look better at heavyweight? Was he draining himself at light heavyweight, which is having a detriment to his performance? Or, is going up to heavyweight an excuse to just not be as disciplined? And it seems like it's the former. It seems like him going up to heavyweight is because he was having trouble making the light heavyweight weight limit, and that he felt like it was having an impact on his performance. So one of the things that I think is interesting where we see a direct, kind of support of that argument is that like I said, his last fight at light heavyweight, he got knocked out. In this fight, we saw him face one of the biggest power punchers in the division in Derrick Lewis, who is a scary striker, and hit him with just about as much as you can. He hit him with flying knees, he hit him with flush uppercuts right on the eye. There's not much else you can hit this dude in the head with than Derrick Lewis already did. He hit him with head kicks. But he handled those shots really well. It's shots that, you would have expected to knock him out given his history, but I think that him not having to cut that weight and not having to dehydrate his body and his brain and the toll that takes on your body seems to have played in his favor. He was able to get some takedowns, which is good. You know, he was able to close the distance on Derrick Lewis, have a decent amount of clinch control, get a takedown, get some top control for a little bit. But Derrick Lewis won the decision. Again, it's being disputed a little bit on who should have won the decision. I thought Derrick Lewis should have won the fight because Latifi, while he did get some takedowns and have a little bit of top control, his striking was basically non-existent. Derrick Lewis was able to land some big shots, and every time it was on the feet, it was Derrick Lewis controlling the octagon, controlling the fight, controlling the pace, landing shots where Latifi wasn't. So I think that Derrick Lewis won the fight, and I thought that Derrick Lewis looked really good in that effort as well. He showed a more varied strike game than we've seen him show before. He's always kind of thrown a little bit of kicks, but he was throwing, you know, really quick switch kicks to the head and all sorts of stuff. So I think it was... First off, I think Ilir Latifi, regardless of it being a loss, I think his stock goes up. I think he's being introduced to a new weight division, which kind of needs a little bit of a bolster. You know, there's the heavyweight division is kind of boring outside of the Stipe Cormier deal that's going on. You know, with them being 1-1. So I think that, you know, a new person who people are already familiar with being put into the heavyweight division is always fun. I think he will win some matchups. I don't think he'll get anywhere near title contention, but there are some guys that'll be exciting fights. But I think that as well as being a good introduction for Latifi to the weight class, I think it was a good showcase for Derrick Lewis to really display the improvements in his striking game and where his game's headed. I think it's not a good sign that he's getting taken down by Latifi, you know, especially when he gets up to face a Stipe or a Cormier or somebody who has more credentialed wrestling than Latifi. But his striking game being displayed looked great, and it looked much more diverse than we've seen, and so I'm really excited to see where he goes from here.
So it sounds like you think the judges did an okay job on this fight.
On this one, yeah, it's a lot of people are saying not so much, but I agree with this decision. So, you know, like I said, James Krause and Jonathan Martinez, I think they both got robbed. But Derrick Lewis, Latifi, it's kind of the same boat as the main event where you can convince me either way.
Then moving on to the next fight, the Women's Flyweight Championship. Now this is one that did not go to a decision. It was finished before it got to that point. We have Valentina Shevchenko against Katlyn Chookagian, and Shevchenko dominated the fight. She finished it in the round 3. I mean, what else can you add to that analysis?
I mean, I could give some specifics, and that's about it, because that's a pretty cut and dry analysis. You know, it's Chookagian really didn't get much going. She was never quite able to find her range. She seemed super hesitant the whole time. She got cut in the second round, which, or I think it was late in the first round. It seemed to, you know, be a factor. And Valentina Shevchenko just continues to prove that she's one of the best fighters, not only in her weight class or in all of women's MMA, but in all of MMA in general. She has one of the most well-rounded games, one of the most technical striking games you could find. Her counter-striking is on another level, and her power for the division is great, and that's exactly, you know, why she beat Chookagian. It was, you know, she was controlling the range on the striking. She was able to find her range, but Chookagian wasn't. She was able to time Chookagian's, you know, low kicks in particular, and use those as a gauge for when Chookagian would be in range for her own kicks and for her punches. And she landed a bunch of, you know, her really famous kind of spinning back kick, and I don't know, it was just a domination, you know. Once she got a takedown, in both rounds she got a or in all 3 rounds, she got a takedown. And in all 3 rounds, once she got the takedown, Chookagian couldn't do anything. She was able to advance position once or twice a little bit just to kind of get into a more solidly, you know, a defense solid position. But Valentina Shevchenko held her down on the ground and was being offensive and throwing strikes and advancing position for the entirety of the round after she got the takedown. So, like I said, she just dominated in every facet. She was better in striking, landed more shots, landed harder shots, landed a lot more kicks, landed a more varied range of shots, got takedowns, held top control, landed shots on the top, and then got her into a crucifix at the end of the fight and pounded her out, and the ref stopped the fight. And putting somebody in a crucifix and pounding them out is one of the most brutal ways that you can end a fight.
So do you think there's anyone in this women's flyweight division that can be a threat to that title?
Nope.
So do you think there's any chance that Shevchenko will try to be, maybe go for a second title, another weight class?
I think it's possible. So there's a couple things here, right? Going down in weight's never easy. She formerly fought at bantamweight at 135 because they didn't have a flyweight division. They made a flyweight division. She went down to her natural weight class and won the title. In the flyweight division, she faced the current flyweight champion twice and lost on 2 occasions. I think both by close decision. So it's not out of the realm of possibility she goes up and faces the greatest of all-time women's MMA fighter in Amanda Nunes, who is both the 135 and 145-pound champion after beating Cyborg, and then defending her belt at 135 against Germaine de Randamie. But so that third fight isn't out of the realm of possibilities because the first 2 were close. But it's also not very common to see somebody who lost twice get the third fight with that person, And it also doesn't seem like she's super interested in that fight. But she has beaten, both in her kickboxing career prior to the UFC and in the UFC, former strawweight champion in Joanna Jędrzejczyk in her most recent fight before this one. She beat Jędrzejczyk, who was going up to flyweight at 125, coming from 115. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Shevchenko goes down in weight class to face the 115-pound champion, or the 115-pound champion come up to her in Zhang Weili. So Zhang Weili took the title from Jessica Andrade, who beat Rose Namajunas, who beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and hasn't defended her title yet. So I think at this point, Shevchenko is saying that Zhang Weili needs to defend the title, I think, before they worry about doing a crossover division fight. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. And to be honest, there's not that many people that I find interesting as matchups in her division. There is a woman in strawweight, I think, in Tatiana Suarez, who I think is a problem. She might be a flyweight, though. Anyway, when Tatiana Suarez comes back, she is a real problem for both of those divisions. So I'm real interested to see what happens with her. But, I mean, Shevchenko, it's kind of... Does she move up and face Nunes for the third time? Does she move down and try to get that strawweight belt? Who knows? But there's nobody in the weight class who I think touches her. Which is kind of fun to watch.
Let's move on to the... main event, light heavyweight championship, Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes. Now, this is a one where Jon Jones won the fight, but word on the street, it was a very controversial win. So, I mean, I'm interested to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, so the thought process, or the thought that a lot of people have, is that Reyes won rounds 1, 2, and 3, and Jones won 4 and 5. And meaning that Reyes would win the fight, right? I don't... round 1, I think definitely Reyes won. Round 2, I think Reyes won. It was a little closer than round 1. And round 3 is basically the deciding round in the fight, Everyone's opinion on who won the fight hinges on how they scored round 3. It was the closest fight for sure. Or the closest round for sure. And you can convince me either way. There's a couple things that I was taking into consideration while watching and rewatching this fight, right? And so, first off, Dominic Reyes looked so much better than anybody expected him to look. His striking was on point. His takedown defense was on point for the first 3+ rounds. He landed a ton of shots. His footwork was great in the first few rounds. Even in the later rounds, he just got tired. His cardio was great in the first 3 rounds. And I think that's really what spelled the end for him was, A, facing the greatest of all time, who sort of figured him out by the end of the fight, but also his cardio sort of started to fail him towards the end of the second through the third, fourth, and fifth rounds. Not drastically to the point where he, was sluggish in there, but he was obviously not keeping up the same pace. But I think Dominic Reyes won rounds 1 and 2. Round 3, again, it's that argument either way. And that's really where you're going to decide who wins the fight. I think that, like I said, the things that were impressive to me were Reyes' his movement, his footwork, and his takedown defense. The thing that was the most impressive to me was Jon Jones' just overall defense. Reyes threw a lot more shots. He landed more, if you look at the stats. But I think a lot of those shots that people are saying landed were barely meaningful. Jon Jones' defense in this fight, his head movement, his bobbing and weaving out of the way of punches, his rolling with the punches was so impressive. He barely got hit with any big shots, where he was landing big shots on Reyes. And even like the big shots that Reyes was landing were not that big. Were not as big as they looked, at the very least, and were not as impactful as they may have seemed. In particular, there's one huge flurry in the second round where it looks like Reyes is pouring it on Jon Jones. But if you go back and rewatch that flurry, he doesn't land a single punch. Every punch stops about here while Jon Jones is leaning out. And it, just misses. And he's just... It was brilliant. It was an amazing performance on both men's part. I think that the notion is to want to give the win to Dominic Reyes because it looked like the closest fight that Jon Jones has ever had. When you have somebody who's been as dominant and as crazy good as Jon Jones, the moment that he doesn't look that good, everybody thinks he lost. That's not the case, though. It's just a different Jon Jones. He's more mature now, but he's also older now. There's things taking a toll on his body, on his mind, on his confidence, I'm sure. But he's also just a little more mature in the sense that, generally as guys get older, whether it be ability or whether it be their change in mindset, you see them stop throwing things that are as reckless. And one of the things that made Jon Jones so incredibly dominant, but more so incredibly impressive and unpredictable was exactly that, his creativity and his willingness to take a risk. He's throwing flying knees and crazy spinning back kicks and all sorts of crazy shit when he's younger. And now he's more measured. He's more to the point. He doesn't feel the need to throw these flashy, over-the-top techniques to achieve his goal. And not only that, but I think he typically chooses to go with the person in their strongest aspect.
So it sounds to me like this is a fight where you had one fighter come out and have a strong performance early on. Middle was kind of mixed, and then towards the end, Jon Jones takes over. So it sounds to me like it's kind of not really a super controversial decision to give it to Jones then.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it's not crazy controversial. But like I said, it comes down to how you score that third round. A lot of people scored it for Reyes. And I've rewatched it several times, and I kind of went back and forth on who I thought won and who I thought didn't win. I spent one round focusing on one guy, one round focusing on another, one round kind of trying to watch in the middle, and that third round is real close, man. So, like, to me, it's not that controversial. I think where the controversy comes in is, like I said, for the first time ever in Jones' career, it looks like a guy beat him. And so people kind of want that to be the case, I think. It's like, when you don't perform as great as you normally do when you're the greatest of all time, people immediately are, you're done, right? Or they want you to have lost, When Brady puts in a bad performance in a Super Bowl, even if they win, people nitpick how good Brady was, Doesn't matter. He's still the greatest, right? Same with Jon Jones. It's the first time in his career that it's arguable that the other guy won, realistically. And so everybody is just saying the other guy won. Like I said, you can convince me either way. Rewatch that third round over and over and over again.
So in your view, was the earlier fight with James Krause the more egregious judging?
I think Jonathan Martinez was the most egregious judging, but James Krause, that one particular round really bothers me, that somebody scored it for the other guy when he was in top control for 4 minutes. it just like that one thing shows you how incompetent that one judge is to me. It's insane. But I mean, I understand where people are coming from. You know, like I said, on first watch, I thought Reyes won the fight. On rewatch, it's not that I'm convinced that Jones won the fight. It's just a little more doubtful that Reyes for sure won the fight.
But it's like you were saying that when it comes to judging with these fights, like you have to take it round by round. You can't be letting recency bias from the previous round leak into the round you're currently judging.
Yeah, but what I mean is like rewatching that same round. So I literally sat there and I watched round 2 and then I rewound it and then I watched round 2 again and then I rewound it and then I watched round 2 again. Then I did the same thing with round 3 and then I watched both of them back to back 2 more times, I think. So I think I've watched 2 and 3 5 times each or 6 times each at this point. And every time I watch the rounds and focus on a different thing, it kind of changed my perception a little bit. They're close, especially 3. They're really close. So it kind of depends on the judge, you know, and in particular with MMA, judging is a huge problem because they're still regulated by the boxing commission. So you have judges who are actually boxing judges who are judging MMA fights, and a lot of these guys have no flipping clue what they're looking at. You know, a lot of judges who are judging MMA fights don't really know how to handle kicks. They don't really know how to handle takedowns. They don't really know how to handle top control when somebody's not doing something. Or they don't really know how to handle bottom, you know, somebody who's on the bottom and is throwing up submissions while the top guy isn't doing anything. And so there's a lot of things where I think that the judges are just woefully inadequate and uneducated, and that makes the judging in MMA really questionable at times. And this is one of those times where you see that. And we've seen it before for sure, but it just so happens that this one night had a bunch of questionable decisions. This main event, whether it's a questionable decision or not, is debatable. I think it's one of the less egregious decisions of the night for sure. But you could convince me either way if you presented a really good argument on your perspective on the fight. You know what I mean? It's that third round is a big question for me. I don't know who I think won it. Like I said, I watched it 4 or 5 times and I kind of went back and forth.
Yeah, so essentially we're advocating for better judging in UFC, and hopefully we get it at some point, but
we'll see.
For now, that's the results for the card.
I'll volunteer my services. I'll be a judge.
Yeah, that'd be a fun gig, wouldn't it?
Great, dude. You can pay me $20 and I'll do it, dude.
I could get some space cadet to do it for $50. You'll do it for 20 though.
Yeah.
So that does it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, stay tuned. Watching Lit Sports Online. This is a.
As soon as you finished the countdown, I realized we didn't talk about who was going to introduce it, and I've introduced the past like 3, and it completely threw me off. Just give us a countdown again. He's going to do the thing.
Okay, 2, rolling in 5, 4, 3.
Welcome to Lit Sports Online. We're doing a recap video for UFC 247, Jones versus Reyes. And let's just say the theme of the night was terrible judging. I mean, can we agree on that?
Yeah. Can we redo that so you say split decision? Now that we have the title of the show, we should at least say it in the intro, right?
Yeah, redo it.
Yeah, okay.
Take 3. Rolling in 5, 4, 3.
You're watching splits. Fuck.
What the fuck?
Keep it rolling. Keep it rolling. All right.
Breathe
in. Take a deep breath. You guys ready? Take 4. Rolling in 5, 4, 3.